A very warm welcome to the vlog that takes you inside galleries and exhibition spaces across London, the South East and beyond. You might have noticed, if you're a regular viewer, a couple of cosmetic changes to the vlog. I've changed the name from the Art Vlog to Art Gallery Explorer to make it a bit clearer about what this channel is all about. Today I am at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, that mecca of modern art, the biggest collection of modern art in Europe, to explore an incredibly special sounding show by Romanian great Constantin Brancusi, or Brancusi as he's called in Romania. I'm going to be calling him Brancusi in this vlog, but Brancusi is one of the pioneers of modernism. In fact, I go as far as to say that along with Picasso, he was central in formulating the language that we today call modernism. He was a sculptor who worked in multiple forms: wood, marble, bronze, and also documented a huge amount of his work. It should be said that the Pompidou Centre holds by far the biggest collection of works by Brancusi, but I'm expecting this exhibition not just to show these off, but also to bring together some stellar loans from across the world. This is the first big Brancusi show anywhere in Europe for 30 years. If you're a fan of his sleek, beautiful sculptures, then come inside and join me as we explore this wonderful sounding show from Paris. Heading on up. I can't wait for this exhibition. One of the fathers of modernism. Hopefully it won't be as busy as the one at the D'Orsay, which I enjoyed, but it was too much really. Anyway, we're right at the top of the Pompidou Centre and just about to head in. I'm going to introduce each section. I'll put on some music, but as always, if you prefer to put your own music on and enjoy the art, please mute. So the introductory section of the exhibition, entitled Whiteness and Light, explains why Brancusi is considered one of the most influential sculptors of the 20th century. And the first space of the exhibition launches us into some mature works, which are often abstract, using pure form to express his ideas. Le Coq, which you've just seen, and Glangbock 1, 2 and 3 in plaster showcase Brancusi and why he's considered such a radical sculptor. The jagged edges symbolise both a rooster's crest and the jerky rhythm of their cry. And there's something incredibly joyful about both a rooster's cry and the sculptures which you can see here. Also in this first section is the sleeping muse, which you can see here, and this resting head is clearly human but devoid of specific form, a constant theme as Brancusi attempted to strip back to the elemental. In Origins of a New Language, we go back to the start and see Brancusi struggling to find his own voice. He arrived in Paris from Romania aged 28 and was briefly an assistant to French great Rodin, but he found Rodin's influence stifling, famously saying, "Nothing grows under the shadow of big trees." As well as the influence of Rodin, we're reminded of the huge variety of other influences that were there in Paris. He was able to visit the Louvre and study classical sculptures and then reinterpret them in his own style as he struggled to break out and find the style which would become unique to him. He also came across more modern artists as well, and we get a real treat when we see the first of many motifs of the kiss in the museum, something I'll talk about a bit later in the final section. This became his first sort of series, if you like, which he returned to again and again. We see the influence of Gauguin, who he would have been aware of, and see that reflected in his own work as well, as you can see here. The most fascinating series of works are the works that you can see here in this series of Child's Heads, as he simplifies the shape to break things down to the essence of things. It's a fascinating stage of development, and I absolutely always love how you can see artistic development happen before your eyes. woodwork was a really important link to Brancusi's Romanian roots. He came from a poor rural background in Romania and didn't go to school, working as a herder from the age of 7. And as a young shepherd, he learned to carve wood, a popular folk art as well as a means of practical ends in rural Romania. And he returned to woodwork in Paris. Many of his works reflect everyday objects like you've just seen, or this vase, or this stool here, which is rustic but beautifully carved in its delivery. And we also get to see the door frame that marked the separation of public life for Brancusi from the privacy of his studio. And this structure also refers back to traditional Romanian farmhouse gates, reminded that Brancusi admired African sculpture, easy to view in the Paris of his day, and its influence can be seen in this work. One of the real centerpieces of this show, and something I don't really relate much to in this vlog, but I should do more, is the photography. There are photographs everywhere, often taken by Brancusi, and it's really important to remember that Brancusi held on to everything: press articles, diaries, letters, and he left over 10,000 bits of documentation to the Pompidou Centre when he died, and a small selection are displayed in a detailed display, which you can see here, which takes quite a time to go through, which tells the chronology of Brancusi's work and puts it into context through his own words and through his own writing and photography and drawings as well. Brancusi died in 1957. He bequeathed his studio to the French government. And we get to see one of the 4 areas of his studio here, the one showing the tools that he used to create his art. And we're reminded that practically everything in the studio is Brancusi's own creation, including the huge limestone fireplace. And you can't help but be struck by the contrast between the inevitable mess of this space and the sleekness and pared down beauty of much of his work. For me, the show really gets going in the fascinating section on feminine and masculine, and it reminds us of why Brancusi is considered such a modern artist in many ways, because by simplifying form and suppressing details, his work becomes ambiguous, especially when we think about sexuality. Masculine and feminine merge into the same image, tapping into an androgyny, which speaks very much to lots of conversations on sexuality today. And one of his most famous and controversial works, you can see here, Princess X, was banned from the Salon d'Independance on its sexual grounds. Apparently Picasso or Matisse crowed, "Here is the phallus." Yet the exhibition questions whether this is a phallus or an idealized version of a woman, because Brancusi's title also adds to this ambiguity. And the same ambiguity is found in his series on torsos of young men, which you're about to see here. Portraits played a key role in Brancusi's output, and I love this quote: "I'll show you what a portrait of you is really like." As we've seen, Brancusi moved away from outward representation to the essence of the subject. Many of the portraits you're going to see later on contained real names and were representing real people, but the style moves away from realistic portrayal, and we're left to identify a few distinguishing features in Brancusi's portraits. It's interesting to remember that as you look at these, that Brancusi would not work with a sitter in his studio. He would work from memory, and that was more fitting of his desire to capture the essence of an individual. Brancusi was working in the early days of human flight, and the section on flight was for me one of the highlights of the show. He was obsessed with this idea of the essence of flight, and for him flight and birds represented an escape from earthly existence. And these works soar above Paris, a bit like the Pompidou Centre themselves. And from producing early on identifiable birds, but bird-like shapes, we begin to see the Birds in Space series, where he stretches out and thins the shape, as you can see here, almost a breaking point. And I'll leave you in the capable hands of this series, which is one of his most famous. smooth and raw, and then reflection and motion. The next two sections focus on how Brancusi harnessed the power of the materials he used, polishing and working with obsession, manipulating with the skill of a master sculptor. And we're also guided to look, as you can see here, at how he elevated the humble plinth into a work of art itself, something that I'd noticed before it was drawn to my attention. And that's a real highlight of the show in itself. Brancusi also had several animal themed series in the 30s and 40s, and once again we see how he distills and breaks down the shape as he captures the essence of the animal. And what I really loved about this section, as you're about to see from the sculptures, is there was absolutely no doubt in my mind what the sculptures were portraying. They were so skillfully done. And Brancusi had many dreams to take his art beyond the gallery spaces and out into the world. He had dreams for many monumental projects, and he recognised one in Romania. And perhaps his most iconic monumental piece is the endless column, which you can see here stretching from the base to the sky. An incredible work which brings to the end the show.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that exploration there of an epic show by Constantin Brancusi from the Pompidou Centre in Paris. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic show, a once-in-a-generation show. And when I think about the good, the bad and the beautiful, the first thing I want to think about is the good. And it was very much the sheer scale of this show. I love Brancusi's work. I think it's incredibly beautiful and it's so modern. Lots of the themes he was looking at are incredibly relevant today. And when I say this was a once-in-a-lifetime exhibition, that's because so much of his work is fragile and it's very, very hard to transport it. So we're never going to see anywhere near a show of this scale, for example, in London. The scale, the range, the loans from Romania and America to supplement the outstanding and obviously world-class collection from the Pompidou made this an outstanding exhibition, and I really, really enjoyed it. In terms of the bad, I wouldn't say the crowds at this time, unlike with the Musée d'Orsay, because even though it was absolutely rammed, the nature of the Pompidou's gallery is up there on the top floor, and also the nature of the works, the fact that you could walk round them, you could circumnavigate them, and look at them from lots of different angles meant the pressure wasn't as strong. Also, I thought the curatorial transitions in the first half jolted a bit in terms of flow, and it was really only after the section on his studio where the show began to flow seamlessly through. But that was a very minor criticism, actually. I can see why some people who went to the show would disagree with that. And in terms of the beautiful is the piece of work that I would like to bring back and have on my wall. And goodness me, art lovers, there were so many choices. I thought the Birds in Space cluster, this one, would have been absolutely perfect to bring back, but I have to return to his most famous motif, the kiss, and specifically this 2016 version from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I thought it was absolutely beautiful piece. I'll give this show a 9.5 out of 10 overall. I absolutely adore this sculpture's work, and I think what was really exciting about it, and maybe you should have said this in the good section, is that whereas the other great sort of language creator of modernism, Picasso, is definitely overexposed. Brancusi, by, as I say, the nature of his works and the fact they're so hard to transport, is very much underexposed. So I felt incredibly privileged to be in this world with over 200 works, the documentation, the pictures, the drawings, the photographs, but most importantly of all, the sculptures. It was outstanding. Don't forget to subscribe to Art Gallery Explorer and hit that notification bell.